Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Record Rangers podcast, brought to you by NordVPN, the best place to get premium cybersecurity and all for the price of a cup of coffee per month. My name is Andy Newport and I'm delighted to be joined by my globetrotting colleague Scott McDermott, who is joining us all the way from sunnier climes in Boston. I was going to say sunnier, Scott. I think you're saying it's a wee bit more like Glasgow today.
Yeah, a bit downcast today, Andy, a bit windy, but I'm not complaining. This heat's been too much for me. Between where have I been? Florida, New Jersey, Boston, Charlotte. The heat's getting too much for me, so I was delighted. And I looked out the window this morning, it was just like Glasgow, grey skies, a bit of wind, so I'm quite happy.
To be honest with you, man, I think we would take grey skies a bit of wind, because all we've had since you left is hosing down rain. And as I look out my window right now into the sunny climes of Paisley, it's absolutely peeing down. But as we go to discuss Rangers, there'll be the fans, Ibrox will be hoping for brighter times ahead. See like what they're there. The news this week, the big news that we've all been expecting, finally came yesterday. Derek McInnes confirmed as a replacement for Danny Rowe. This seems like we've been speaking about this potential appointment, not just for days, but for years. I mean, he's been the guy who's been perennially linked with Rangers. He's now finally here. He's back at the club where he served for 5 years as a player. What's your take on it, Scott? Is it the right appointment for Rangers at this particular time?
100%. Andy, I think you know my thoughts on it. I've been barking the Derek McInnes drum for a good few years now in terms of being Rangers manager. I think, don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think this could be the best decision the club have made in a long time. I think he's made to be Rangers manager. You talk about people that understand the club, understand Scottish football, knows what it means, knows what a successful Rangers player looks like and what's required. Derek McInnes knows all of that. He was part of the 9-in-a-row team, obviously one of the greatest kind of eras in the club's history. He grew up a Rangers fan, knows the club inside out. I just think that Rangers have been crying out for this kind of appointment for a while. They've tried different things. Russell Martin, Danny Rowe, even before that, Philippe Clement. When I think the answer was basically staring them in the face. And finally, now this summer, maybe circumstances have dictated a wee bit with Salzburg coming in for Danny Rowe, but I think the answer was staring them in the face, and finally Rangers have actually made the right choice. I know. Listen, there's no guarantees in football. We know that. Derek McInnes is going to work hard to bring success back to Rangers. He'll need to trust the board and the people in charge to give him the tools and get the right players in. But in terms of a character, a personality, a mentality of what's required to be a Rangers manager. And I say Rangers manager because that's what he is. He's no head coach. He's a manager, which I think is a big thing. I don't think there was a better candidate, and I fully expect him. Might take every manager, every job. I suppose it will take a wee while to kind of get things settled, but I would expect Rangers to be, at the very least, challenging for titles and trophies again next season with Derek McInnes in charge.
I wrote a piece this week for the paper based around, I've heard this kind of notion from some people maybe at Hearts going that obviously the sort of marriage between Derek McInnes and Jamestown wasn't a natural fit. They're going to want somebody who maybe plays a bit more of a progressive style, who's maybe a bit more inclined to trust the data-driven analytics that they obviously specialise in. McInnes being, for want of a better phrase, more of an old school manager, that they weren't natural bedfellows in that sense. But what I think is clear is, okay, he might not have been the manager that Hearts were going to need going forward the more that they went down this Jamestown route. I think right now he's exactly the manager that Rangers need. And I've spoke to so many ex-teammates of him, guys that played for the club, but they all agree just what you're saying there. This, it might seem a sort of flippant distinction to make, but the head coach manager thing is crucial because I don't think just being a guy who's good on the training ground, who's good at the side of a pitch, who's good in an analysis room is what the job of being a Rangers manager or a Celtic manager for that matter as well. I don't think that covers it. I think there's so much more to it. You have to be a leader. You have to be a figurehead, somebody that the fans can look to can seek inspiration and motivation and even faith and trust and guidance from at times. And I think that is what Derek McInnes will bring. I mean, when you look at, I think you only have to look at his performance this year at Hearts. I mean, okay, they did magnificently well. They were aided by a couple of, rough diamonds that they plucked out. You think of like Cazaridis, you think of Claudio Braga. But at the end of the day, that team that he had this season was built on guys who'd either been in Scotland before or who'd been at the club.
Yeah.
And who most people had written off as being not good enough. And he turned these guys into a team that were, 3 minutes away from winning a title. Is that how you see it too?
100%. Rangers need a manager, as you say, need a figurehead. How many times have we sat in press conferences over the last few years and then you go back to your office or your desk and see fans moaning about stuff that the coach has said or something's not come across the right way, or Derek McInnes will say all the right things as Rangers manager. No, he learnt for the best in that regard. In terms of Walter Smith, who was his mentor. One of, if not the greatest Rangers manager of all time. Remember, Walter Smith wanted McInnes in this job for a long time as well. He would have been his pick, which I think tells you everything. So no, he will be the figurehead. He will lead. He will effectively run the club. I mean, I'm not saying he's not going to get involved in stuff away for football, but in terms of the football decisions at the club, Derek McInnes will be in sole charge. And look, we know, I think it was announced today, or word came out today, but Stig Inga Bjorn will be getting a role, a kind of full-time role at the club. Obviously, you've got Dan Purdy there in recruitment. And these guys have done a decent job so far, but Derek McInnes will identify clear targets for Rangers, and he will identify them because it'll be players that he feels have the characteristics to be able to play for Rangers, not just in a physical sense, but in a mentality sense as well. And it will be the responsibility of the recruitment department and the board to go and get these players. So Rangers need to trust them. Rangers have been through a lot of managers in recent years. I think finally they've got the right guy who can bring long-term success, short-term and long-term success to Rangers. Another thing about Derek McInnes, Andy, and I've said this for a few years, it's maybe something people don't think about, but you look at the recent appointments. I'm going right back to Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, Michael Beale, Philippe Clement, Russell Martin, Danny Rowe. Those 5 guys, for me, all good coaches or managers in their own right, not taking anything away from them. But they would have all come into the Rangers job, guaranteed come into the Rangers job, seeing that as a stepping stone to something bigger, something else. Whether it be the English Premier League, whether another top 5 leagues in Europe. This Rangers job is the pinnacle for Derek McInnes as a Rangers man, as a Rangers supporter. He's not going to go anywhere. He will see this as the pinnacle of his career. And I think in the future he might go on to manage Scotland one day, which will be a huge honour for him. And I think he spoke about that in the past as something he wants to do. But for now, at his age and the stages at his career, this is the pinnacle. And I think if Derek McInnes has immediate success or short-term success at Rangers, say he was to go and win a league or a double or maybe even more of this in his first season, there wouldn't be any danger of all clubs might come in for him. If Danny Rowe goes and wins a league or a double, all the chat would have been about, this guy's got eyes on him for Europe or whatever. Big clubs looking up. I just don't think that will happen with Derek McInnes. That's not a slight on him. It's just because this job is the pinnacle for him, and I think that's what Rangers need, a guy who's going to be there for the short and long term and bring real stability, real organisation, a proper winning mentality that he obviously had for his playing days. And
I'm smiling as you say that, Scott, because the readers who are going to pick up tomorrow's paper are going to hear a Rangers legend say exactly the same thing you've said. He's sicker. I'll not spoil who it is, but basically just exactly that. Sick of hearing people talk about Rangers as a stepping stone. That, in his eyes, there's no bigger job than Rangers, and that's exactly how he thinks Derek McInnes will view this one. Another piece I did this week was just about the sort of the entry that he's going to find. He's obviously, I think the players were due back for pre-season training on Monday. I think that might have been pushed back. Obviously, I think the word is that they're still out there where you are just now in New England, Boston, ready for. He might even be going to the game tomorrow night to see Scotland against Morocco. He'll be back Glasgow early next week, we believe, ready to meet his players. But in terms of what he's got to sort of get his teeth into first, and you're thinking, mentality is the big thing, isn't it? Then you're looking at the squad. Right now there's only 4 defenders signed. There's a lot of guys there that they need to be moved out. They're talking, obviously, the fixtures come out today. We're going to discuss that in a few minutes. But you've got Tannadice away on a Friday night, 8:00 kickoff. You've got European games 4 or 5 days after that. He's not got much time to sort of get to grips with this, and he needs to make sure that Rangers hit the ground running, because we know the danger at this club. If you have a bad start, if the atmosphere turns against you, if a narrative builds that you're not doing the job right, you're under pressure. You simply, the days of getting time at Rangers are over. When fans, simply because of everything they've been through, don't have that patience anymore.
But the difference is, Andy, the difference between that and a Michael Beale or a Clement or a Danny Rowe is that Derek McInnes will be 100% aware of that. No, he will know exactly what's required in that opening day of the season. And knowing Derek McInnes as I do, even though he's obviously out in the States just now, he was enjoying a family holiday, obviously, when all this was going on, he will be working behind the scenes as we speak. We know what he's like. He's never off his phone. He never stops thinking about the job, even at the previous clubs he was at. So now that he's got this job, the big job for him at Rangers, I've got no doubt what will be going on as we speak. He's obviously got his coaches getting in with him that he had at Hearts, Alan Archibald and Paul Sheeran, so they'll be working behind the scenes as well. I think you're right in terms of his entry. The really interesting thing for me, Andy, I'm sure you'll agree, is just what Derek McInnes is going to think of some of these players that he's got at his disposal. And I'm thinking about guys like Gassama, Asgard, people like that who, Majovski, that maybe fans are a bit unsure of. Look, I think he's got off to a flyer in terms of he's got Lawrence Shankland available when he gets back. He'll be absolutely delighted that move went through before he get the job. He'll want guys in there that he can trust. He's going to bring in another few players. But when I thought about it last night in terms of the squad he inherits, I think he'll be excited about working with somebody like Shamiti, for instance. We know Derek likes to play 4-4-2 most of the time. He likes 2 strikers in the pitch. I think he'll be excited at the prospect of Shamiti and Shankland playing together. I think I'm right in saying, I need to credit our pal Keith Jackson with us, but I'm pretty sure around the time Rangers signed Ryan Nadiri, that Nadiri was someone who was also in the kind of Jamestown radar, and McInnes kind of knew all about him, and I think quite liked him and rated him as a player. But obviously he was maybe a bit out with the price range for Hearts. Rangers obviously paid top dollar for him, but I think Nadiri's somebody, when you think of his work rate and his physique and his his power and his strength. I think that's somebody that McInnes will be excited to work with. So there are guys in there I'm sure he's looking forward to meeting up with and getting on the training pitch. But I think there will be others. I've mentioned a couple there. I think there'll be others that, I think it'll just be really interesting to see where he sees them fitting in. Can he get guys like that on board? Can he maybe change them? We think, I'm not being unkind, but we think if someone like Asgard is maybe not quite suited to the kind of physical demands of Scottish football. Gassama might be in the same kind of bracket. But can McInnes change that, or will he look at them and think, no, I can get better, try and move them on? Antman's another one that's just come into my head. Where does McInnes likes to play with wingers? So is that a good thing for an Antman, or no? Will he come in and say no? We can get better. So the next few weeks are going to be so intriguing to see what he thinks of this squad and how, in his own mind, he's going to try and shape it to look like a Derek McInnes Rangers team.
I think the intriguing thing for me, and we obviously touched on it a bit earlier on about in terms of, it's not to say that Derek McInnes isn't a good coach, that he's not aware of his tactics, that he doesn't know his onions when it comes to,
of course he is.
But there is this sort of narrative around him that his teams are a bit functional, they're a wee bit, maybe no flair sort of stuff. They just grind results out. And for me right now, I think Rangers fans can't ask for anything more, because they haven't even been doing that. They forget about winning with flair. They've not even been winning so far. Yeah. But I also think it's a bit unkind to Derek McInnes in the sense that I think when you give him the tools, when you give him the funds, crucially, then he can construct a mill and think back to his first Aberdeen team. You're thinking like McGinn down one side, Johnny Hayes the other,
exactly.
Rooney up front, scoring bundles of goals.
And that's a nonsense.
On at Aberdeen, he was having to wheel and deal a bit. He was at Kilmarnock, not exactly bundles of cash. And even at Hearts with Jamestown, you're having to pluck rough diamonds out there. These are guys that are not the finished article. Obviously, you're plucking guys out from like second division in Norway and elsewhere. These are guys that they're going to have flaws to their game. That's all about trying to maximise their strengths. But when he's going to have the kind of sums to work with that he will at Rangers, do you expect to see a bit more football from his team, if you want to call it that?
First of all, I think you're right. I think it is unfair. I mean, you think of that Aberdeen team, as you say, McGinn and Hayes, Christie, Maddison, Rooney, people like that in his team. I mean, that was full of attacking intent. Even the Kelly team, as you say, that he brought up for the championship. You think like Danny Armstrong and Matty Kennedy playing wide, and he was always trying to get two strikers to pick. So I'm not quite buying that. I think Derek McInnes is he's proved he's flexible with his formations. He's really adaptable. It's a horses for courses kind of attitude in terms of what the game is he's going into. And as you say, I think that's exactly what Rangers need. I mean, I keep hearing fans talking about style of play, and we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do this in Europe, and you need to get better. Rangers need to win domestic games of football. He put them in challenge for put them in contention for a title. We've not done that for too many years. Forget style of football.
It has to be winning football.
Start winning games.
Winning ugly, then that's what it has to be.
100%. And I think that's what you'll get for McInnes. He will target specific players to suit what he thinks a Rangers team should look like. And will it always be pretty or pleasing on the eye? Probably no, but tell you what, if you ask Rangers fans, what would you rather? A kind of decent style of play, but you're still 8 points behind the title race in October, or just winning games week in, week out, whether it's 1-0, or 4-0, it doesn't matter. They just need to keep winning games and make sure they're in contention come the business end of the season for a title race. And I think the flair thing is unfair. Even Hearts last season, I'm not saying they played brilliantly in every game, but to get into the position they got into, it was Braga, Shanklin, Kizaridis, towards the end, Chesnikov, Kerjota, people like that making a big impact. So Derek McInnes isn't averse to playing attacking players. But a bit like Walter Smith, the priority, or maybe not the priority, of course you want attacking players in the pitch, But at the same token, you need to keep the back door shut, and you need to make sure you're not susceptible to counter-attacks and conceding goals every week, which you look at the post-split fixtures last season under Danny Rowe, Rangers were conceding 2 and 3 a game towards the end of the campaign.
18 goals in the last 9 games of the season, which is
that's ridiculous.
just 8 games of the season. So I mean, you're entirely right.
So that won't happen.
Just in terms of some of the personnel decisions that he's going to have to make. Nico Raskin over there showed up well off the bench in his first World Cup appearance for Belgium. Some talk around Cammy Devlin, maybe he become the next Hearts player to make that journey along the MA. I mean, where do you see the areas he's going to want to strengthen? And do you think, in terms of Raskin, is that somebody who you think maybe will, because he's going to have to look to free up funds? We know that the club's having a share issue to make money available this summer, but to perform the kind of overhaul that he's going to want, is it maybe time for Nico Raskin to move on and Rangers look to raise some money from him?
Yeah, I think it is, Andy. We had a wee kind of debate about this on the Hotline Live the other night. I think it's time for Nico Raskin to move on. 2 years left in his contract. Don't want to let that run down to a year. He's at a World Cup. I get the impression for Raskin as well that he'd probably be quite keen to move on to another, maybe a better league. He'll see this World Cup as a real kind of showcase for his talents and a bit of a short window. And if Rangers can get a big fee in for him, if he performs really well for Belgium and catches the eye, you'd like to think they would get a big fee. And I think now's the time for Rangers to cash in. Of course, Raskin's a good player. I'm not denying that. Has he done enough in a Rangers shirt? I'm not sure. I mean, he could have been helped, obviously, by a bit more by teammates and managerial decisions. But I still don't think Nico Raskin, for his ability, grabs enough games in Scotland by the scruff of the neck and goes and dominates. So I think if Rangers get a big offer for him, given where he is in terms of his contract, then they'll look to move him on, and that might give Derek McInnes and Rangers some real funds to play with in the transfer market. They obviously need to go and sign a replacement. There's been talk about potentially Lewis Ferguson, and I know that might be a difficult deal to do, but a bit like Derek McInnes coming in as manager, I think trying to get Lewis Ferguson should be an absolute no-brainer for Rangers if it's possible, and he'd be the perfect replacement for Raskin. And I know fans will debate that back and forward, but for me, like McInnes, Ferguson, total understanding of the Scottish game, total understanding of Rangers as a club. He's been captain of Bologna now for the last couple of years. 2 years ago, best midfielder in Italy. But I think those leadership qualities and that character, you even see his performance over here the other night against Haiti. I thought he was probably Scotland's best player or one of their best players in the victory. So I think he'd be a brilliant sign if Rangers could get him. It might take a lot of money, but if you could get him in for Raskin, I think it'd be a great move.
For me, I think the problem with Raskin is you're never quite sure where his best position is and where he wants to play. I think the best thing about Ferguson is you can put him in that sort of deeper role you saw the other night, and he'll do that brilliant breaking up job that he did. Then you saw when he was at Bologna, especially his early spell there before the injury, and okay, you need to see if that's still a factor in it. But he was in that more advanced role off the front, scored a bundle of goals. So it shows that he can play in a number of different ways. But just before we
also Andy, who's been the biggest influence or one of the biggest influences on Lewis Ferguson's career? Derek McInnes. I mean, he get the best, maybe not the best out of him, but his form at Aberdeen got him the move to Bologna in the first place. And McInnes played a massive part in that. So I think it'll be at the back of Derek McInnes' mind, especially if he loses Raskin. If Rangers can somehow put a package together, put a deal together to get Lewis Ferguson back to Glasgow, I'd be amazed if he didn't try and do it.
Just before we finish up and I'll be chatting about the fixtures, Record Sport brought you the news this week that Bailey Rice is going to be signing a new deal at the club. I think Scott Burns has come up with some further detail this morning. I think it's a 2-year package. I think there was some suggestion he'd be heading out on loan. That's now not looking to be the case. I think Derek McInnes wants to see him in training first before he confirmed that will definitely be happening. I think there's some chat around them going to Kilmarnock, potentially sort of hoping to sort of replicate what happened with Finlay Curtis down with Neil McCann at Rugby Park. I mean, for you, what are your hopes with Bailey Rice? I mean, it seems like we've been speaking about the potential that he's had for so long, and yet there's just always been that sense that we're still waiting and waiting and waiting. He's never really made that stride to come through and show what he's really all about.
Yeah, I think that's a big kind of crossroads in Bailey Rice's career, Andy. I must admit, it's almost feels like kind of now or never for him.
I'm surprised he actually stayed at Rangers, given how little opportunity he's had.
Slightly surprised. He was obviously injured towards the end of last season. Well, he's only 19, but I mean, he's probably just not kicked on as much as you hoped he would. He got a few appearances in big games under Clement and Barry Ferguson. Yep. Yeah, that's right.
Injured in that game, sadly.
And you hoped he would kind of kick on. Look, there's always been I don't think anybody's ever doubted Bailey Rice's ability on the ball. It's the other side of the game that people have questioned. Can he get about the pitch enough? Does he do enough off the ball? We've yet to see that, really. He's not put a kind of, obviously, a sustained run of games together at Rangers. I would like to see him go on loan, I must admit. I think you look at the difference it's made to Curtis going to Kilmarnock, if it is Kilmarnock or it can be somewhere else, but the difference that's made to Finlay Curtis in the space of 6 months, I think shows you the benefits of going and playing regular first team football at Scottish Premiership level, and I think that's what Bailey Rice needs. I know what you're saying. I think Derek McInnes will want to have a look at him in pre-season, and listen, he might look at him and think, no, he can be part of my squad. He can be useful to me. In the job pretty much immediately, but I'm more inclined to think he'll have a look at him and say, no, let's get him out for minimum 6 months playing regular football. I think it'll do Bailey Rice the world of good. I think it'll help Rangers, obviously, in terms of the player's development. Whether it means he's going to have a long-term future at Rangers, who knows? It might mean he improves, but isn't he quite ready for the Rangers first team, so you then kind of move him on, but I think it's a kind of pivotal moment in the boy's career. I think he's been given a big opportunity by getting another deal at Rangers, and he has to go and grab it and make the most of it.
Just quickly before we finish up, then the fixtures came out today. Rangers will kick off the season 31st of July away to Dundee United at Tannadice, an 8 p.m. kickoff, which is, I must say, Scott, an absolute killer for us in our deadlines. So we'll have to get clattering get the match report over. It's then Hibs at home, St Mirren at home, Aberdeen away, Falkirk away, Motherwell at home, and then September the 20th trip to Celtic Park. That'll be an intriguing one just because of the way that the season ended for Derek McInnes at Celtic Park with Hearts in the final day. But the one I'm sort of intrigued about is the Hearts, the trip to Tynecastle on October the 28th. Just what kind of reception Derek McInnes is going to get when he heads back to Tynecastle.
I don't think he'll get a great reception at many grounds, Andy. I must admit. I mean, he'll probably get booed when he goes to Aberdeen, booed when he goes to Tannadice, former clubs, booed when he goes to Kilmarnock, definitely booed when he goes to Hearts, and definitely booed when he goes to Celtic Park. So
Easter Road too, former Jam.
Exactly, of course.
Everywhere.
I don't think he'll be popular anywhere he goes, but listen, he'll thrive on that. He'll love that. It'll just motivate him even more. Well, I think it's a decent start for Rangers in the season. You knew they were always going to get a tricky away game on the opening day or opening night, as it is now. At least there's a chance for them to go top of the league for a few hours. Do you know what I mean? For MDL's plays. But it's going to be a tricky one. Away to Tannadice is never easy. Dundee United have their own kind of aspirations and ambitions this season, so they'll be right up for it for the off. But that's the beauty of, as I said right at the start, of having a manager like Derek McInnes. He will know exactly what to expect that night at Tannadice. He'll know everything about Dundee United and Jim Goodwin's team. He'll know them inside out. So he'll put a Rangers team out there to do a job. Again, it might not be pretty. It might not be scintillating football the opening day of the season. But even now, as we're sitting here, you'd still fancy a Derek McInnes Rangers team to go there and get the job done and get 3 points and get them off to a flyer.
Well, folks, I think that's us for another week. I will say thank you to Scott. All the best to you tomorrow night in Boston, and also to the Scotland team. We'll all be fingers crossed for a big result that perhaps takes us a step closer to the knockout stages.
Yep, keep me out here for another week.
No, man, you need to come back next week. You need to come back. Get rid of Rangers transfer drive.
I'm taking 3 weeks holiday when I come back.
We'll say thanks again to our sponsors, NordVPN. You'll be able to listen to this episode and many others on YouTube, the Apple Podcast app, and Spotify. So please like and review, as that helps us to spread the pod far and wide. You can get up to date with all the latest news coming to Ibrox at dailyrecord.co.uk, as well as in the newspaper, which you can get at your local newsstand. So Scott and I thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.